Welcome back. We have a very difficult but necessary analysis to get into today.
We do.
We're going to be examining the source material around a criminal case that really, it exposed this profound gap between a public image and a very dark private reality.
You're talking about the case of Ruby Franke?
Exactly. The woman behind the 8 Passengers YouTube channel, which was, for a time, massively popular.
And the sources we're working from here, that they provide a very comprehensive, fact-based timeline.
Right.
We can track her rise, the public concerns that started to bubble up, and then, of course, the criminal investigation and the very severe consequences.
And our approach here has to be strictly impartial. We're sticking only to the documented facts from the public record.
We have to. But we also have to approach this with a full understanding of the gravity of the abuse and, of course, with sympathy for the victims involved.
Absolutely. The central question we really need to unpack is how. How does an online personality, someone who built this huge empire based on parenting advice?
Millions of subscribers.
Millions. How does that person transition into a convicted perpetrator of aggravated child abuse? We need to trace it all the way from those first warning signs that viewers raised right through to the legal resolution.
And to do that, we can't just list the events. We have to get into the details, the psychological context, the business side of it, the ideology of this group, connections.
And the legal system in Utah.
And the complexities of the legal system. That's the only way to really understand the depth of this case.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. We're talking about, 2015? This was a really pivotal time for that whole momfluencer world.
It was. And Ruby Franke, who was born Ruby Griffiths in Logan, Utah, she launches the 8 Passengers channel.
And it wasn't just a small project.
Not at all. From the very start, it was positioned as a serious business. It was all about documenting her life in Utah with her husband, Kevin, and their 6 children.
The scale of it is what's so striking, the consistency.
That's the key. The sources say they were posting new videos 5 days a week.
5 days a week.
And often at 6 a.m. on the dot. That kind of rigor, that frequency, it's how you dominate the algorithms and build a massive, very engaged audience very, very quickly.
And we're not talking about a small following here.
No. By June of 2020, so just 5 years in, 8 Passengers was an absolute powerhouse online.
The numbers are.
They're huge. The sources cite about 2.5 million subscribers. And they had amassed over 1 billion views.
1 billion.
1 billion. So they weren't just influencers. They were a major media business. And they were monetizing every single part of their daily life, especially their very specific parenting philosophy.
And that model, the monetization, that's so important here.
It's critical. This whole family vlogging world, it incentivizes this kind of total transparency, or what looks like transparency.
Right. It blurs the line.
It completely blurs the lines between a private family decision and content creation. Every argument, every punishment, it becomes potential content.
Which is exactly why that turning point around 2020 is so important. Because as the channel got bigger, the specific disciplinary methods they were showing off, they started to attract not just views, but real alarm.
Yes, and we can trace that alarm back to some very specific incidents. One of the ones that always comes up involved their son, who was 15 at the time.
Okay.
The details that were shared publicly were that he had been banned from his own bedroom for 7 months.
7 months.
7 months. He was forced to sleep on a beanbag chair.
For a teenager, the psychological impact of that.
Yeah.
Losing your own private space for that long is it's immense.
It's considerable. And that single incident, it really triggered this huge wave of online discussion and scrutiny. People started questioning the health of their parenting style.
There's another one, right, with their youngest daughter.
Yes. That incident really showed this pattern of prioritizing strict rules over, basic needs. The sources say Franke sent her 6-year-old daughter to school with no lunch.
And the justification
was that the child was responsible for making her own lunch.
Yeah.
A 6-year-old.
But the school got involved.
Yeah.
That's the part that really stands out.
It is. The school staff called her, obviously concerned that a child was going hungry, and Franke refused to bring her lunch, just flat out refused.
So it shows this unbending commitment to an ideology, even when it's causing direct physical distress to a small child.
Exactly. And it was part of a larger pattern.
Okay.
The sources document other severe punishments. Such as? Well, there was the instance of sending a child to one of those wilderness camps for troubled teens, which is a very extreme, very costly intervention.
Right. Not a casual punishment.
Not at all. And then there were the psychological tactics, threatening to behead a child's stuffed toy, for example.
Just an act designed to create fear.
Complete control. And then there was the time she told two of the children that Santa Claus wouldn't be bringing them gifts for Christmas.
And what was the reasoning she gave for that?
Her reported rationale was that the children were too numb to respond to other punishments. So the goal wasn't just obedience, it was a specific emotional performance she was demanding.
So as all these reports piled up, it went from just online comments to something more organized.
It did. A Change.org petition was started, specifically calling for an investigation into perceived child abuse and neglect in the family.
And the parents' response.
They defended their actions, they claimed the incidents were all taken out of context, but you can see a direct correlation. Despite their defense, the public pressure mounted and the channel's popularity started to decline.
So by 2021, the brand was in trouble.
It was. The public's tolerance for these methods was clearly dropping, and it was hitting their bottom line.
So this public decline of 8 passengers around 2021, 2022, it happened right as Ruby Franke's personal life was also imploding.
That's right. The year 2022 was a major turning point.
This is when she and her husband, Kevin, separated.
Yes, Kevin moved out of the house. And right around the same time, the 8 Passengers YouTube channel was first suspended, then eventually it was just terminated.
So her marriage and the platform that made her famous, they both end at the same time.
Right. And that creates this vacuum that gets filled very, very quickly by a new, and I think we can say a much more dangerous professional partnership.
And that's with Jodi Hildebrandt.
Yes, a counselor. Ruby Franke shifts her career entirely. She goes from being a family vlogger to working with Hildebrandt's company, Connections, as a mental health coach.
It's not just a new job. It's a completely new identity. She's not just documenting her life anymore. She's actively selling a methodology.
A very rigid, and as we now know, a very controversial one. They create a whole new public presence together, a new video channel also called Connections, a joint Instagram account called Moms of Truth.
And their business was offering parenting classes.
Parenting classes, methodology sessions. They were moving from just showing their life to prescribing actions for others.
So what was this Connections methodology? I mean, what were the ideas they were actually selling?
Well, at its core, it was based on this idea of distortion.
Distortion.
Yes. In their view, if you felt any shame or depression or any kind of distress, it was because you were living in distortion. You were out of alignment with the truth.
So the problem was always internal. It was always you.
Always you. And the only way to heal was through what they called radical accountability, which often meant extreme self-denial, isolation.
It sounds like a thought reform system almost. A way to shut down any critical thinking.
That's a fair description. If you feel bad, it's not because you're being controlled or abused, it's because you are distorted. It's a closed loop.
And the sources say this ideology encouraged people to cut ties with family.
Yeah. To cut off anyone they deemed toxic. And when you apply that concept to your own children, you can see how it facilitates their isolation, how it removes them from anyone who might protect them.
This whole ideological framework it's just essential context for what happened next.
It is.
Because even after the 8 Passengers channel was gone, people were still worried about the kids.
That's right. And it wasn't just online viewers anymore. It was people much closer to home.
Neighbors and her eldest daughter.
Yes, particularly her eldest daughter, Shuri, who was in college. The sources confirmed they were repeatedly calling the authorities, asking for wellness checks on the younger siblings.
And what was the specific concern they were reporting?
That Ruby was often leaving the children alone. So even as her focus was intensifying on this new business, there was this persistent pattern of neglect.
Eventually, though, this new platform, Connections, it met the same fate as her first one.
It did. In 2023, both the old 8 Passengers account and the new Connections account were totally terminated by YouTube, and she was blocked from making any new accounts. It was a complete professional ban.
And Jodi Hildebrandt, the counselor behind the ideology, she faced professional consequences too.
Yes, and this is a really important detail. Hildebrandt later surrendered her professional counselor license.
Surrendered it.
Yes, while the court case and a disciplinary investigation were pending. And that's a direct link. It shows the state recognized that her professional counseling practice was deeply intertwined with the criminal abuse that followed.
So the end of Franke's online career in 2023, it was really just hiding this horrific escalation that was happening in private.
Yes.
Which all came to light on August 30th, 2023, that day in Ivins, Utah. It's the anchor of this whole story. And it was all because of the bravery of one child.
The details of the arrests are They're truly harrowing. The whole thing was set in motion when Frank's 12-year-old son escaped from Jody Hildebrandt's house.
And he didn't just walk out the door.
No, he had to climb out of a window, a desperate act to get away.
The condition he was in. That's the immediate, undeniable proof of what had been happening.
Yes. The sources describe him as emaciated, severely malnourished, and he had open wounds and duct tape around his wrists and ankles.
This isn't discipline. This is torture.
It is, and we need to just pause and recognize the suffering in that description. He went straight to a neighbor's house for help.
And what did he ask for?
Food and water. That was his desperate plea. Just basic sustenance. The neighbor saw his condition, saw the duct tape, and immediately called the police.
And when emergency services arrived, the injuries were officially documented.
Yes. He was taken to a hospital for the severe malnourishment, but also for, and this is a quote, deep lacerations from being tied up with rope.
Tied up.
Physically restrained to the point of injury. And the investigation didn't stop there.
No, they went into the house.
Police entered Hildebrandt's home, and that's where they found Frank's 10-year-old daughter.
And she was?
Also severely malnourished. She needed immediate hospitalization as well. It confirmed this was systematic abuse targeting more than one child.
What about physical evidence? Did they find anything in the house that backed up the boy's story?
They did. The search turned up key evidence. They found items that were, quote, consistent with the markings on the boy.
So ropes, things like that.
Ropes, adhesive materials, the instruments of restraint that matched the boy's injuries. It made the children's testimony undeniable.
There's one detail from the police reports about how they were treating his wounds that is it's so cruel.
It's incredibly disturbing. Police reported that the boy told them they had been using a mixture of cayenne pepper and honey to dress his open wounds.
Cayenne pepper.
Yes. On open lacerations. The pain would have been absolutely excruciating. This was not first aid. Investigators saw this as an intentional infliction of pain, likely tied to their ideology about casting out evil.
It just shows the level of deliberate, systematic cruelty.
It does. And all of this evidence led very quickly to legal action.
Both women were arrested.
Ruby Franke and Jody Hildebrandt were arrested in Washington County, Utah. They were each charged with 6 felony counts of aggravated child abuse.
And the charges related specifically to the 2 children found in the house.
That's right, the 12-year-old boy and the 10-year-old girl. And given the severity of the allegations, the starvation, the torture, they were both held without bail.
And the other children?
The Utah Division of Child and Family Services stepped in immediately. The boy, the girl, and 2 of Franke's other minor children were all taken into protective state care. They had to be removed from that environment to ensure their safety and begin their recovery.
With evidence that strong, the case moved toward a resolution pretty quickly. Let's walk through that legal timeline, starting with the guilty pleas at the end of 2023.
The pleas were crucial. They prevented a long and what would have been an incredibly traumatic trial for the children.
So Ruby Franke pleaded guilty first.
Yes, on December 18th, 2023, she pleaded guilty to 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. 2 of the original 6 counts were dropped as part of that plea agreement.
And these plea deals, they include what's called a factual basis, where she officially admits to what she did.
Exactly. And the factual basis here was damning. Franke admitted to specific acts like forcing her son to do manual labor outside for weeks without enough food, water, or sun protection.
Which led to severe sunburns.
Severe, dangerous sunburns. The plea also acknowledged her claims that the children were possessed by evil spirits. That established the motive, this distorted ideology, for the abuse.
A key part of her agreement was about how the sentences would be served.
A very key part. She agreed to serve her sentences consecutively, not concurrently.
Okay, so can you explain what that means for people who might not know?
Of course. Concurrent sentences are served at the same time. So if you have 4 or 5-year sentences, you just serve 5 years.
Right.
But consecutive sentences are served one after the other, back to back. So this agreement dramatically increased the minimum amount of time she would have to spend in prison.
And Jody Hildebrandt.
She followed suit. On December 27th, so 9 days later, she also pleaded guilty to 4 counts of felony aggravated child abuse. Her deal was similar, with 2 charges dropped.
So that brings us to the sentencing on February 20, 2024. Now, this is where we have to explain Utah's legal system because it's different. It's called indeterminate sentencing.
Right. It's often misunderstood. In a state with determinate sentencing, a judge says, you will serve 10 years. That's it.
But not in Utah.
No. In Utah, the judge sets a minimum and a maximum range. Franke received 4 sentences, and each one carried a range of 1 to 15 years.
And they're consecutive.
They are consecutive. So you add up the minimums. That means she must serve a minimum of 4 years in prison before she can even be considered for parole.
And the maximums. 4 times 15 is 60 years. Is that her sentence?
Well, that's the mathematical maximum, but Utah law actually caps it. For consecutive sentences like this, the total time served can't go over 30 years.
Okay, so her sentence is effectively 4 to 30 years.
That's right.
So who decides how much of that time she actually serves?
And that is the crucial part. It's not the judge. It's an agency called the Utah Board of Pardons and Parole. They hold all the power.
So after she serves her 4-year minimum, her case goes before this board. What do they look at?
They conduct a really comprehensive review. They look at the severity of the original crime, first and foremost. They assess her behavior in prison. Has she followed the rules? Has she been in therapy?
What about external input?
Absolutely. They review psychological evaluations. And, most importantly, they have to consider input from the victims. The children and their guardians can submit victim impact statements.
So the children have a direct voice in how long she stays in prison.
They do. The board takes all of that, the crime, her behavior, the victim statements, and they decide if she's been rehabilitated enough to be released. If they think she's still a danger, they can just set another parole hearing for years or even decades down the road.
All the way up to that 30-year maximum.
All the way up to the 30-year max. That's why it's called indeterminate. The real sentence is decided long after the trial is over.
Okay, stepping back from the legal process itself, we need to look at the broader context here. And a big piece of that is the religious justification that was used for this abuse.
Right. The source material confirms the Franke family were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But it's crucial to understand that the claims Franke and Hildebrandt made to justify their actions were a deep distortion of that faith.
They weren't aligned with official doctrine?
Not at all. They explicitly claimed that these extreme acts, the starvation, the restraint, were not only justified, but necessary according to their beliefs.
Necessary to teach the children how to repent for sins.
Yes, and to cast out evil spirits from their bodies. This framing, in their minds, it transformed profound cruelty into a kind of spiritual duty.
And that bizarre sense of righteousness continued even after they were arrested.
It did. The sources point to a recorded phone call from jail where Jody Hildebrandt shows just no remorse. She actually compared herself to a biblical martyr, claiming she was going to prison unjustly.
Wow.
And she even talked about the power of her example. It confirms she truly believed her actions were righteous, even when they led to her own imprisonment.
So how did the rest of the family react to all of this? Ruby Franke's sisters are also family vloggers.
They moved very quickly to distance themselves. They put out a joint public statement and then individual videos to emphatically disassociate from Ruby's actions. It was a necessary move to protect their own families and brands from being associated with the abuse.
And Kevin Franke, her estranged husband.
He had been separated from Ruby for over a year when the arrest happened. He filed for divorce in November of 2023. And it was finalized in March 2025.
And he took legal action himself.
Yes. He filed a separate civil lawsuit against Jody Hildebrandt for the abuse his children suffered.
Which brings us to another major lawsuit, one that targets the Connections business itself.
Right. This is the civil suit filed by Michael Tillman, who's the husband of a former client of Connections.
And this suit accuses them of business fraud.
Business fraud. But it goes further. It uses a very specific legal tool. It alleges that they were engaged in a racketeering enterprise.
Racketeering? For an online coaching business, what does that mean in this context?
Well, we usually hear about racketeering with organized crime, but the law, the RICO Act, can apply to businesses that exist as a vehicle for a pattern of criminal activity.
So the lawsuit is claiming Connections itself was a criminal enterprise.
That's the claim. That they advertised and sold fraudulent services, and that the entire business was structured around promoting a pattern of criminal behavior.
And what illegal acts does the suit claim they were encouraging?
The allegations are incredibly severe. The suit claims they encourage clients to commit illegal and harmful acts, specifically child abuse, child torture, and psychological abuse.
So the argument isn't just that Ruby Franke was an abuser who happened to have a business.
No, the argument is that her business itself, the methodology, promoted criminal harm among its clients. It's a huge accusation.
The cultural impact of this case has just been enormous. So much media attention.
Almost immediately. In 2024, Lifetime released a movie, Mormon Mom Gone Wrong, the Ruby Franke story. That speed shows you how fascinated the public was with this story.
But that movie drew a lot of criticism.
It did, from the person who matters most, really. Frank's eldest daughter, Shari, was very critical of it.
What were her concerns?
Her concerns were all for her younger siblings, the victims. She said they weren't contacted for the movie, that none of the money would go to them for their recovery, and that its release would just re-traumatize them. It raises that constant ethical question in true crime.
Sherry also took control of her own narrative.
She did. She published a memoir in January 2025 called The House of My Mother, A Daughter's Quest for Freedom. It's the first real account from inside the family, from someone who saw the danger and tried to get help.
And then came the wave of docuseries.
A huge wave. Hulu had Devil in the Family in February 2025, and that one was significant because her ex-husband and 2 eldest children participated.
Right.
Then Investigation Discovery released Ruby and Jody, A Cult of Sin and Influence, and then Netflix had Evil Influencer, the Jody Hildebrandt story at the end of the year. The sheer volume of content shows that this is seen as more than just a crime story. It's a cautionary tale.
About online influence and trust and extremism.
Exactly. #, closing thoughts. When you synthesize all of this material, the one thing that stands out is just how fast and how severe the collapse was once that public facade finally cracked.
Right.
The whole system, the constant documentation for YouTube, the monetization of discipline, the isolation that was enforced by the connections ideology, it created the perfect storm for this kind of systematic abuse.
And it was only exposed because a child was desperate enough to climb out a window.
A starving, injured child. That's what it took. The billion views her channel had didn't protect her kids, but the visibility she created, it did fuel the public outcry that eventually forced authorities to act.
And now we're seeing those consequences play out. On a criminal side, her freedom will be decided by that parole board for potentially the next 30 years.
And on the civil side, the family is trying to recover. And that business model that enabled the abuse is being challenged in court. The facts of the case, the ropes, the cayenne pepper, those are the tragic details the court punished.
It's the contrast that's so hard to process.
Yeah.
The person millions trusted for family advice was the perpetrator.
It forces you to look critically at the whole system that allows harmful, controlling ideologies to be packaged and sold as expertise.
So that really leaves us with a final question. Thinking about that civil lawsuit, the racketeering case, the one that claims the connections methodology itself encouraged clients to commit child abuse.
Yes.
How should we think about accountability for online experts and the advice they sell to millions? Where does the personal responsibility of the consumer end and the legal liability of the business begin when the product being sold is an ideology that allegedly promotes criminal acts? That's something to think about as you process this very challenging material. Thanks for listening.